Today, we have Elliot Martin with us. Elliot is a famous atheist. Well, what is the name, by the way, what is the name of you? You have a thing, was it the Silly Atheist?
Secular Rarity is what my like YouTube moniker is. That's where, if you ever see me on any of the shows, that's what it is. Most of those people will refer to me as Secular Rarity or SR, but I'm public about my name too, so everybody knows, hey, it's Elliot, you can call me anything. But yeah, that was just a name I needed just so that people recognized me when I was saying silly stuff in chat. So
That's great, because that's how I first came across you, because I kept thinking of myself as a silly atheist, because I think so much about atheism is just people have the wrong idea about us. We're a hated bunch of people.
Right. And more often than not, I find in the atheist, in the agnostic, non-religious communities, it is a bunch of good-hearted, silly people. We are just a bunch of nutcases, just all trying to have fun and do good with each other. So
I actually I looked it up on YouTube, on Wiki, and found there's a group that call themselves Atheist Catholics. I thought I coined that phrase. No, there's a bunch of people that call themselves Atheist Catholic. Because I've got a book, The Catholic and the Atheist, that I wrote. And there's also atheist Jews. So I just think if Christians would recognize there are Christian atheists as well, but if the more fundamentalists of both ilk would try to respect one another, I think we've got an awful lot of common ground, because the way the ethics work, both in the Bible and in atheism, that's pretty much straightforward the same way.
Yeah, and for so many of my friends that I've met over the years, that have much bigger followings and channels and been doing the shows for a long time, all of that, the vast majority of them, when you talk about that deconstruction, deconversion phase for them, for a lot of them, who they truly were inside, that good person that just sees somebody else in pain and says, I want to help, that didn't change. There wasn't anything different. And that's, I think, one of the most destructive things about religion, is that a lot of them really do try to instill this, you're not a good person, in your core. And I think helping to dispel that myth in the atheist community is going to do a huge amount for that, extreme polarization on either side. Because once we start to say, look, you can be a good person and be a conservative. Like, you can be a good person and be an atheist, right? You can also be
awful.
Total right. In any one of those, absolutely. But again, more often than not, I really do find we have so much common ground with other people that we disagree with, and they are good, and they are trying to do good. We just have different views about what that is, maybe, or
that's right.
And that's okay that we have those. We can talk about those, and we can compromise on those. And I think, the arc of human history is bending towards justice, right?
It is. Why is it so hard for us as a group to call ourselves atheists and to have a Sunday atheist assembly or an atheist meeting on Sundays? Why is that so hard?
I think one of the big aspects is there is a lot of trauma that I think people have experienced in the past in similar settings, and I think that it's hard for them to go into a space where there's a group of like-minded people that are all kind of paying attention to whoever it is at the front of the stage. It reminds some people too much of those bad experiences in church, I think. That's one aspect. But I also think another aspect has to do with kind of just what it means to be in a space where it's okay to question and it's okay to have differing opinions and stuff. That starts to open up a door that it gets harder to kind of close that door when some people want to go further than, say, this particular group, or some people want to try a different path that, is still in the scope of what we're all doing when we gather, but maybe is just something we've never done before. And so I think when you're in that more conservative vein, when you're in that more looking back to a past greatness of history, it's easier to kind of close off those boundaries and say, like, this is our group and maintain that group. And as opposed to when you're kind of saying, like, hey, we want you to think for yourself. We want you to question things. We want you to be comfortable with expanding your horizons and stuff. Once that kind of, it's once you let the cat out of the bag, right? It's hard to kind of get it back in sometimes. And then, as we all know, atheists are like herding cats. We've all heard that. So,
and I think part of that is that as you age, church was shoved down my throat. I'm an ex-Catholic. It was shoved down my throat. So by the time I left, my parents to go on my own, it was so great not to have to get up on Sunday morning and go to some place that I didn't want to go to. I think a lot of it is just as people go into a more atheist part of their life, they don't want to go anywhere on Sunday. So it's if you're trying to get a group of people who just don't want to get together on Sunday anyway, you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, there is that too. And there's always that question, right? Am I actually filling a need here? And if the answer at the end of the day is this isn't a need, well, then we maybe need to reevaluate that.
But I have a need to be around people who think like I do, because I like to hear some agreement. I like to find out if somebody agrees with me on something. I know that's kind of me putting myself in a bubble, but other parts of the week I'm not in that bubble. So I don't think we as atheists go to a group to get indoctrinated.
Yeah.
But I do think Christians do that.
Yeah, and that's kind of again why there's this part of me that does have just kind of an inherent problem with religion in general, of many different stripes, not just Christianity, but that's the one that kind of affects me mostly day to day. But there is this core aspect in a lot of teachings out there that is very much about believe because you believe, because somebody else told you to believe, because they believe. And there's not really this, we want good foundations in terms of why we think this way, right? It's just my parents believed it, their parents believed it, we're all supposed to believe it. That in and of itself, I think, is harmful and it's dangerous. And there are so many problems that come downstream from that, right? And that's why I'm so against that. Because like you said, that devolves into a group of people that are asking to be indoctrinated on some level. And that's frustrating.
And I think when you said it beautifully when you said atheists are like trying to herd cats, because it seems to me that the people that I know that are atheists all seem to be sort of leaders in a sense, and you can't have a whole room of leaders because they all want to get up there and lead.
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing too, is that so many of us were in that rote repetition, follow along, that now that we've gotten that opportunity to kind of stand up and say, no, hang on a second, let me tell you my thoughts. When it comes to somebody else, even if they're on our side, putting us in that following position again, I think, again, it just kind of, it hits some of us deep inside and we get that kind of, indignant, I'm not going to do that, which there's some goodness to that for sure, but there's some problems. Everybody can't be the head chef in the kitchen. We have to have somebody that cracks the eggs and melts the butter. And those are in vital jobs. But I get that everybody wants to be the chef and do all the fancy.
Don't you think that the most important part of being a leader is leading people where they want to go?
For sure. That's definitely. I'm. What's that term where it's a servant leader, right?
Yes.
Somebody is taking on a leadership position specifically with the intention of trying to say, how do I serve these people that have put me in this leader position? How do I serve them better? Yes. I think that's why you find some of the people that are super successful, in this non-religious space, is because I feel like they do that a little bit better, right? Not everybody, of course, too, because we all seem to really enjoy the dumpster fires every now and then, and two people just calling each other evil is at least good for clicks, I guess.
But the place that I've been able to find the most common ground with Christians and conservatives, and this happened just yesterday when I was in a bar, as I said to them, I said, I think we agree on the most important thing. And they say, what is that? And I say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And for an atheist, to me, it's ultimate altruism. You're basically saying, I'm going to be good to you because I don't need anything returned. I don't need to go to heaven. I don't need a reward. It's just a good thing for me to do things that are good for you, and eventually it makes us all better people.
Right. And I think that is one thing that I've pointed out to some of my Christian friends in the past where, they've said to me, like, well, if there's no God, why wouldn't you go murder and harm all these people and stuff, right? And my response is always, what is the positive reason to do that for you? Right? And they say, well, I just wouldn't have any reason not to. And I say, yeah, I don't have any reason not to just go bake a cake and then throw it on the ground. But the question is, why would I do that?
Right.
What is the reason that I would bake the cake and then purposefully throw it on the ground? Like, and the same thing, like, I think it's, Penn Jillette that was the one who first said, like, I murder exactly as many people as I want to, right? And that's zero. Like, I don't do that because I don't think it's the right thing to do. You can tell me that I don't have some axiomatic, fundamental grounding of philosophical blah, blah. You can tell me all of that, but that still doesn't make me feel like the right course of action is to go be a jerk to somebody.
Right.
I still want to be nice to people.
There's no future in it.
Right. How is that good for me? How is that good for them? Where does that come out on my side? And the answer is it just doesn't,
I want to stop philosophizing now, and I want to go to something practical, which is what are you trying to do with your website and your podcast?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that is really necessary for us in the atheist, non-religious, agnostic, free thinker, humanist. We could say any title, right? But I think one of the biggest things for us is that we are still very hated by a lot of outside groups.
Yes.
And that's not just like a feeling of persecution. That is consistently, for whatever reason, atheists get rated lower on surveys than like murderers.
They do.
And that's not to say like murderers are just the worst people in the world ever and they'll never be, but it's just like, wow, that's a bit weird.
It is.
So one of the big goals that I have is trying to normalize being a non-religious person. Normalize being an atheist. Let other people know, hey, look, I'm an atheist. I go to the grocery store. I pay for my groceries. I fill up my car with gas when it needs it. A buddy of mine cries and I hug him. A friend of mine gets a dog and I tell her it's awesome. Like, I'm just a person just like you.
We need a makeover.
Yeah, exactly.
An atheist makeover.
That's exactly what it is. And I think that is something that is so missing in a lot of these discussions that we have, a lot of these shows that we do and so forth. We have so many discussions and conversations where we want to point out the fallacies, right? Which is great. It's good to help people with critical thinking. We want to point out the bad parts of the Bible and we want to say, look how terrible, your God condones slavery and all. And yeah, hey, totally true, right? But there's a lot of that. There is a lot of that out there. And I don't know that we need another 20-minute breakdown of why the Kalam cosmological argument sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe what we need is just a 5-minute video of a couple of people hanging out together and they look at the camera and they say, hey, I'm an ex-Catholic. Hey, I'm an ex-Mormon. Hey, I'm actually an ex-Muslim. Yeah, and we're just all out here because we're going to play a pickup game of soccer real quick, because that type of content is everywhere for the religious. It's everywhere. Every single time I turn on a TV or something, there's something about, hey, we're all getting together and we're painting houses. By the way, Jesus loves you. I'm a Christian. We do have a pretty bad image, it seems, in a lot of different communities and circles. We're consistently rated very low in terms of trustworthiness, and
it's not true. No,
it's nonsense. It's a narrative that has been spun for so many years and has been deeply ingrained into a portion of society. And we have had wonderful people all throughout history who haven't believed in lots of different things, right? And it really is just a purposeful attempt by religious groups to make their side seem like they're the ones holding all the cards. They oftentimes talk about how you just can't be a good person unless you believe in this or that. And
they demonize us.
Absolutely. In a lot of places. And for me, one of the biggest things that was helpful when it came to questioning my belief system was morality. I wanted to understand why it was a good thing not to steal from people. Yeah. Why I shouldn't just go punch that person in the face when he says something mean to me. And what I started to understand is that is a really dense conversation.
Yeah.
It's very nuanced. There is a lot of stuff, and a lot of people have talked about it for a long time, and a lot of them don't have anything to do with the God. There are good, solid reasons to be a good person for yourself and others.
It's its own reward.
Exactly.
Being good is its own reward.
Right. You don't need anything else. You don't need some outside thing telling you this is how you be good. When we wake up in the morning, we know what it feels like when we stub our toe. And we know that hurts. And we don't like that. And when we see other people in that position too, we recognize that pain. And we feel it for ourselves. And when we cause that pain to other people, we know that. And that's it.
I came to a conclusion about atheism that allowed me to embrace atheism, because I kept it at bay, constantly afraid, Pascal's wager, and I was constantly afraid, to go ahead and let go of Catholicism. And what solidly got me out of that sphere was my raison d'etre. Why am I here?
Yeah.
And I struggled with that almost all of my life. So I finally said, I think that if I devote my life to making other people's lives better, if that's what I'm all about, then that's worth living. Just that is all I need. Because I was almost suicidal at that point. I had to have a reason to live. And that gave me the most wonderful reason. And then I talked to my sister about it. I said, that's why I want to stay alive. And when I talked to my sister about it, she said, did you know that sounds like Einstein? Einstein said that we're here to make other people's lives a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's not that we're always going to be perfect on that, right? Like, we're going to make mistakes. We're humans. That's just what happens. But it's whether or not that is a constant goal for us. And if we keep that always ahead of us in our sights, and we always try to strive towards that, we will do better. And the mistakes that we make will get less and less, and the harm that those mistakes cause will get less and less, and the amount of pain and suffering that exists out there will diminish. And that's good for no other reason than the fact that that's good.
I've been a much happier person ever since I found that path.
Yes.
I can say a much more solidly loving person than I was before that.
Yeah.
It's easier to be generous when you say, I have to do this every day. I have to find somebody every day that can do something good. So it's really helped me tremendously, and I think it could help other atheists as well, because I think when you're letting go of something that is so sure, you need something sure to grab onto.
Yeah, and I think that's another space where I really feel like the atheist community doesn't have a great answer. You know, a lot of people talk about like this God-shaped hole, and I think that's BS, but I think the things that religion has capitalized on over the years have been things that are important to us just as humans. The idea of community, the idea of support from a loved one, right? Like these types of things do matter for us as people, and religions have co-opted them and said, this is ours, this came from us.
That's exactly right.
And we need to remind people and provide an opportunity for those who said, well, I don't have any of that anymore because all that came from God. No, heck no. No, there's a community. There are people that care. And yeah, maybe sometimes we get together and we read a Bible verse and we say, gosh, that's dumb. But maybe sometimes we just go to dinner. Maybe sometimes we just go watch a movie because we're people and all we want is just to be around other people that care about us and support us and are trying to do good like we are. And again, because so much of the narrative for so long has been, you can only find those good things through God. When people step away from that, they think that they can't have it sometimes.
Yeah, those good things still exist.
Right, they do.
You just don't have to center them around a myth.
Exactly, and you get to have more of those good things, in my opinion.
You're doing something on the internet with your podcasts. Why don't more people follow you?
Currently, I'm what many of my friends have referred to as a stream hobo, affectionately, I'll say. But most of the times that I'm out there, I am, helping out and supporting other communities and stuff, which is awesome. And I love doing that. I've gotten connected to a lot of really incredible places and people and stuff. Over the last couple of months, my wonderful girlfriend and I have been crafting some stuff that will be mine personally. Okay. And I'm very excited to, this is actually...
Can you tell me?
Yeah. So
tell me about it. This is your announcement.
This is, honestly, it was the first time we put it out there, really. It's very much focusing on exactly kind of what I was just talking about. I don't want it to be about debates. I don't want it to be the nitty-gritty of philosophy. I want to show that we as atheists can come together and talk about a myriad of things. And we don't have to focus on just the horrible things that religion does. We don't have to just focus on trauma. We can talk about a silly story about this zoo in Thailand that was afraid an ostrich was going to escape. So they have one of the workers dress up in this ostrich costume and just run through the zoo for a day, freaking out the people. And so nobody knew anything about it except the we can talk about that and just laugh and have fun and be normal people. And so that's really where the focus is. And we've been compiling a bunch of different things, and I'm hoping to get a whole slew of really cool people out there. And
so humor is going to be central to what you're going to do.
For sure. Humor, as well as that general normalizing aspect and trying to say, look, we're just people. We're just people, just like you're people. And at the end of the day, we all want the same things. We all want a warm bed.
Since I know what you're doing, I want to volunteer to be a consistent contributor of atheist satire.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. That's one of the things I've always loved about your stuff is I love that good-natured humor that comes through, because I think there are so many times that has been powerful for me. George Carlin in the past.
I was going to say George Carlin.
I mean, come on. He's George Carlin, Ricky Gervais, Stephen Fry. These folks get out there and they say some things that not only are they like a good point, but also it's funny, and it's not putting anybody down. It's not being mean, but it's trying to say, like, look at it from this angle, and it kind of seems a bit ridiculous.
And it's okay because of the way they frame it. We know we're laughing at ourselves, and that's okay.
Right.
Especially when you get these kind of humorous and stand-up guys who do self-effacing humor. Mm-hmm. Because by them letting their guards down and making fun of themselves, it lets you make fun of yourself.
Exactly. And that's good, because we all need that. We all need that moment where we get a little humble and we say, hey, let me let me maybe re-examine this. You know, maybe I thought I understood this really well, but maybe I don't, you know. That's really important. That's something that, you know, we don't always do. And believe me, I know people in places in the atheist community that doesn't do that anymore. They said, look, I got it. No God, we're done. Don't need to question anything else. Well, maybe there's some other things out there, too, that we need to look at.
To me, it's all about sharing. It's this feeling of being connected to a community of people who are about the business of being kind to other people and trying to make the world a better place to live.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing. That's a thing that takes daily effort, constant effort. We're going to get tired. We're going to have setbacks. It's going to suck. People are going to yell at each other. Friendships will be lost and stuff. Yeah. But again, I think the answer is we always keep that objective in front of us, and we make sure that it is never in the rearview mirror. Because the moment that happens, we can no longer say that we are doing good.